Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with the story in which the boss had other plans for our OP's vacation. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Force me to take my vacation time when I don't want to, and tell me to secure my station by freshening up my passwords before I go? Okay, boss. To start with, my boss had his moments. Sometimes he was a D who would push off me on my raises or screw with my system. Sometimes he would hook me up and make my life pleasant. This was not one of the latter. So I had plans for vacation, but my boss decided I had to take my vacation time in June instead of August because he wanted to take his vacation in August and no other time would work. I lost some money as a result, but that's my fault for planning ahead, I guess. Well, I'll start by saying my position was vital, and being gone for 2 weeks with nobody able to access my terminal was not ideal for the business. After forcing me to take my vacation early and losing a chunk of my deposits, he told me to change my passwords before I go for security reasons. Well, that's exactly what I did. I didn't leave notes. It's a security system. I don't leave passwords laying around. I didn't leave anything for his part-timers to work with. I did precisely as he demanded. And when I go on vacation, my work phone does not ever get turned on. I straight up left it at home. I told him on the way out the day before that if he has questions, ask him now. He said, I know what I'm doing. Apparently, while I was gone 2 weeks, his part-time techs ruined the server system, destroyed my work terminal, managed to screw up and lose several clients, got my account hard-locked, it was easy to fix, and all around cost my boss around $100K in damages/profits lost. Most of these part-timer techs were fired for the amount of property damage they did. For the life of me, I can't figure out how they ruined so much tech while I wasn't around. I still don't know how he runs a business, but he stopped giving stupid requests like that. And our second story. I guess I'll reply all. I'm a software developer. My department and another department each made different products, but a customer would often have both, and these products need to communicate with each other. Both teams had the task of adding a feature which required some modification to how the products communicate. Communication is done via a published protocol, which means that our two teams just need to follow the spec, which is great. Teams are in different countries, so time zones make direct collaboration somewhat challenging. My team finished our changes, and so I reached out to my counterpart on the other team to arrange for testing our products together. They were still working on it, and that was all I heard from them for a while. That's fine, we were ahead of schedule. I can wait until they're ready. I set up a sample installation on a spare server and told them how to access it remotely, and asked that they let me know if they need anything. A week or two passed before they were ready, and they started testing on a Friday. They encountered some problems, so they sent me an email. Because of the time zones, this was past my working hours, and I wasn't checking my work email. When I didn't reply, they wrote another email CCing their boss and my boss. When a reply to that email didn't come quickly enough, they CC'd even higher on the chain of command, demanding that my team work to fix the problem. They further stated that if the problem was not immediately fixed, their release would be late, and it would entirely be my team's fault. On Saturday, I got a call from my boss explaining the situation. He politely asked me if I could spare some time to come in on the weekend to troubleshoot the problem. I agreed. I spent some time reading log files and packet captures and comparing system behavior to the spec. Soon enough, I found the problem. Their product was sending messages that did not conform to the spec. I was able to simulate the bad message and a fixed version of that message to confirm that our product handled both as it should. Nobody from the other team was online, so I sent my report by email. Remember how they sent that email blaming my team for their problems? The email that went to their boss's boss, my boss, and my boss's boss. Yeah, that was the email I replied to, replying to all. I very politely and professionally explained exactly what the problem was, making sure my explanation would be clear to those upper-level managers before going into the technical details and what changes they would need to make to fix the problem. Clicking the send button has never felt so satisfying. Working on the weekend resulted in me being in a much better mood than if I'd stayed home the whole time, and per department policy, I took some comp time during the week to make up for those weekend hours. This was my first time working with this team. But from what others told me, this wasn't an unusual experience. A few years later, the company was restructured and that office was closed down completely. And our third story. The guy in the suit who doesn't know anything. A few years ago, I had the misfortune to work for a truly dysfunctional boss at a micro-niche company that provided training for a certain group of professionals that had to do continuous training. If I mentioned the group, you would know the company, so I won't. I was the senior technical lead for a certain application, so I worked with every department in the company. Anyway, this company was owned by a guy that happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right product and was successful in spite of himself. Since he thought that he was a genius, and he wasn't, of course he packed the company with a whole crew of equally mindless idiots. Think minions on steroids. But the crown jewel was the sales team. These were the quintessential narcissists who would take a 2-hour lunch with all the sales buddies and boss and have 3 martinis and a couple lines of a certain illegal substance. The one star of the brunch was the bane of my existence while I was there. He would call and demand that I stop what I was doing and fix all of his problems while he was on the phone. Half the time he'd call me later and cuss me out for doing the opposite of what he demanded. I didn't, but he couldn't remember since he was drunk. I finally resorted to telling him to send me an email that explicitly stated what he wanted done. That way I could prioritize his tasks and have proof of exactly what he asked for. However, 5 minutes after he sent the email, he would call me and demand that I stop what I was doing and fix his problems. Since we were in a sales-oriented company, complaining to the boss didn't do any good. All I got was, just make him happy so he doesn't complain to the owner. Thanks, boss. Now comes the revenge. I finally had enough. I was looking for a job anyway, and I was underpaid, so I wasn't worried about any blowback. Whenever something broke and he demanded an immediate explanation, I started using Star Trek technobabble. Yeah, that report broke because the Heisenberg compensator blew back through the subspace conduit. Sorry, that user couldn't access the system because the dilithium warp router needed to be hooked up to the Jeffries tube. He bought it all. And then comes the best part. I found out the best part after I left the company. He repeated everything I told him to his clients, word for word. They just thanked him for the information and he went on his way. Then they laughed after he hung up the phone. I didn't change anything because even before this, their nickname for him was the guy in the suit who doesn't know anything. And our last story. The software does all that now. Okay, boss. Many moons ago, before the '08 recession, I, manager of the records department, among other things, worked in an industry where record keeping is super critical. Bad records mean no more business because one of the many government agencies would shut you down, sometimes permanently. My direct boss, who reported to the CEO, was a good enough person, but was overworked and would grab onto any idea as long as it kicked the can down the road, at which point the problem was worse. He needed to go, but the CEO liked the results despite how negatively they impacted production and morale. In short, my boss had to go away, and I needed to be the one reporting to the CEO. So I waited until he grabbed onto an idea so terrible that it had to be exploited. My boss came in and told me to stop the record keeping, all of it. He told me the salesperson for our software provider informed him that the software could do all of it. My boss was even kind enough to send me a direct email stating all this. I called my team in and told them the news, and we were all horrified and knew this would come back to bite us all. The software in question could do the job, but it was never set up or configured to meet the requirements. I'd already spoken to legal and our government contacts a few months earlier about having software to do this, and we're required to inform them and submit samples of it prior to going live. None of that was ever done. So we kept doing our job as normal, and strangely, no one asked any questions until the quarterly meetings. My boss apparently had not informed the CEO of his plan and instead decided to show the cost savings he'd implemented at the quarterly meeting. Thankfully, our accountant was a sharp-eyed person and she immediately started questioning things. From the information I received from other folks who were in the meeting at that point, the accountant asked how it was possible, and my boss confidently told them he stopped the record-keeping requirements and the software was taking care of it all now. The IT people who knew what was required to be compliant apparently created a sound akin to a record needle scratch. IT stated we were months from implementation. Legal chimed in and pointed out that we were now in a seriously bad legal position. The CEO turned white before assuming a wondrous red tinge. Much shouting was then heard. Apparently, the salesperson told me it would work was not a good excuse. Suddenly, my phone rings, and it's the CEO. I'm ordered to the conference room. I smile, grab my folder of evidence, inform my team I might not be back and it's been fun, and walk towards my fate. I walk into a scene I would like to have taken a picture of. The CEO, legal, and IT are up in arms. My boss looks defeated because he now understands how big the issue is. I grab a seat and listen to the lamenting of the masses. When it's my turn to talk, I calmly explain my side of things. The CEO loved the direct email from my boss telling me to stop record keeping. After letting that sink in, I calmly told them of my insubordination for the good of the company, the uninterrupted status of the record keeping, and how we were not in a pile of trouble, but were in fact 100% compliant. There was a collective sigh of relief. I then told them moving forward I would like to be out from under my boss's management and would prefer to report directly to the CEO. To my surprise, they agreed, and within the week, my boss was moved to places he could inflict less damage while having more eyes on his actions. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.